A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to films I'm willing to talk about again. So, for this instance, this year, believe it or not, marks the 20th anniversary of a certain Hasbro-made movie known as Tonka Tough Trucks, The Biggest Show on Wheels, or just Tonka Tough Trucks for short. This basically does center on the likes of Tonka Joe, basically the mascot of the likes of Hasbro's many different Tonka varieties, including Tonka Construction, Tonka Search and Rescue, Tonka Garage, and we certainly can't forget about the monster trucks. But for the most part, this movie does mainly focus on the truck aspects, monster truck racing and performing, and more importantly, the story of Tonka Joe, whom one day encounters a big fan of his. And well, a number of different events transpire as he tackles on a certain rivalry while also impressing this fan of his at the same time. So in terms of the plot, let's break it down here. The movie starts off with a unique title sequence, including some beginning credits. The voice of a certain onboard computer known as Scan basically makes a full analysis on a certain truck's performance. We then jump cut straight to Tonka Joe's face as he shuts off Scan, and basically the truck itself is revealed. The truck is basically known by the name of Bolt, and that is basically the running theme here in Tonka Tough Trucks. Every truck that Tonka Joe owns, maintains, and performs with throughout his career has its own unique nickname attached to it. And Bolt, for instance, is quite unique at climbing up mountains, which is essentially what he's doing in this particular instance. To get back to the township of Biggsburg, the setting for this movie in particular. And when he does climb up these mountains, he's in fact looking forward to meeting up with the other racers of the upcoming Truck Week, a series of races and competitions that take place all throughout the likes of the land itself. You have races that'll be settled on in all sorts of terrains, canyons, waters, mountains, etc. And there is in fact a certain reporter whom is on live to cover the whole entire thing. However, in terms of other characters, we do basically cut over to the likes of Tonka Joe's biggest fan, known as Bobby. He, along with his Aunt Jen, are driving a Jeep Grand Cherokee down the road as he is beyond excited. Knowing that he won the sweepstakes out of 10,000 fans makes him a pretty lucky boy. And because he's on the way to see his biggest idol in life, Tonka Joe, it's sure gonna be 1 week for him to remember for all time's sake. However, in terms of what eventually transpires, a certain trucker ends up above. He almost causes his truck to fall down the side of the cliff, but once he does thankfully save himself, trouble is not over yet. A series of small pebbles gather into small rocks, then to boulders, creating a rock slide that happens on the side of the mountain. And Tonka Joe is basically heading straight into the path of it. Scan does inform him of certain ideas, and the two do try to work this out together, eventually spotting some nearby pipes, utilizing it as a blockade. Thanks to the usage of some cables and the pipes themselves, the rock slide is in fact able to be stopped. However, it is in the path of the nearby road, in which the same truck driver is traveling down on. It's later revealed that this truck driver is none other than Tonka Joe's rival for Truck Week at this very occasion, known as Robert B. Quick. And I might as well imply that Tonka Joe is voiced by Bill Mundy, who would later become famous for other things like National Geographic related narrations, and then you have Ian James Corlett, who voices Robert B. Quick, alongside a few other notable voices that were around at the time as well. This movie definitely has some unique voice work going on. Plenty of dialogue to keep us interested in the story overall. Not to mention the efforts relating to teamwork and the bitter rivalry that takes place between two powerful truck drivers. Anyways though, the avalanche is in Quick's way, and he mercilessly honks the horn to try and get it out of the way, not knowing that rocks and pipes cannot move themselves out of the way. Even though Tonka Joe is not in the path of all this, he still does notice that there is another small pebble that falls down onto his windshield and then strikes another boulder further down the mountain. This boulder, believe it or not, is even worse than the straight up avalanche that just happened. This boulder is, in fact, heading straight into the path of Bobby and Jen. Their car is heading straight towards it as it is falling down from the side of the cliff. This allows Tonka Joe to take advantage of something known as the T-shift. Upon activating it, Bolt's compartment opens and out comes a jet. And this jet in particular grapples onto the boulder and pulls it out just in time to avoid crushing the two. However, the pipes apparently are not going to hold for very long. But thankfully, Joe's quick thinking does allow for them to use that same boulder that they're still holding on to clear up the mess once and for all. Yeah, and Quick was beyond lucky to not be hit by any of the debris. Joe does get back into Bolt safe and sound, and they make their way back to Biggsburg. This is where we cut up to the reporter in question. This reporter is in fact covering the likes of the story entirely. And all the different events that transpire in Tonka Tough Trucks itself, the movie itself has a lot of explanations done, including a history of Tonka Joe, as well as how Truck Week will take place. So I guess you could say he's more of a narrator type, but as a reporter, live on the scenes during the entirety of the plot of the film. But in any case though, it's quite clear that Tonka Joe is not messing around because he has himself the unique Tonka Garage. A shifter that is located outside of a small building. Bobby and Jen do make their way to get a hold of it, and Joe assists them, revealing the almighty truck fleet that he has alongside him. This does technically pave the way for a certain show or follow-up of some sorts. After all, with the amount of space that's in the garage, it seems to only make sense that eventually they could have had like a sequel to this at some point. In any case though, they do jump straight to the scene where the first race takes place. And there's essentially 3 of them that take place in the entirety of Truck Week. The first one, we get ourselves a different truck. We go from Bolt to Dunes. And Dunes is in fact made for the likes of rocky, desert-like terrain. He's got more of a 4-wheeler crawler sort of thing to him. And Tonka Tough Trucks' own Tonka Joe does handle the truck with ease. However, when it comes to the other racers in mind, especially Robert B. Quick, it's no surprise that Quick does play dirty and is rather notorious. He's a bit narcissistic by all means compared to Joe's strong, brave, courageous, golden heart. You know? The fact is that many people do think of him as a ladies' man. And to some extent, I would agree with that. And Bobby, as we know, is part of the reason why Tonka Joe still does continue on this big career of his, racing trucks and impressing the many fans that he's built over the years. And being that he's a big mascot for Hasbro's Tonka toy lineup, it sure was impressive to say the least. I remember playing the games, as well as watching some of the shows and whatnot, but this movie was definitely something. Something different that we had gotten. This was one of their examples of utilizing CGI in the early days of when CGI was taking over the likes of animation. And by 2004, it seemed like almost everybody was hoping to get into it. But I'd say it was 2006 where it ultimately became clear that CGI was on everybody's side. Anyways though, the big trouble starts to begin right at the point where they're supposed to jump over the canyon via a ramp. They're supposed to excel at a good speed, but since Quick's booster unfortunately malfunctioned, causing him to spin out of control, Joe had to come up with something, and fast, because if they didn't, Quick would have landed all the way into the bottom and possibly gotten killed on impact. So what does Joe do? He proceeds to slam into Quick's truck and launch a parachute at him. This parachute does attach to the back of Quick's truck, allowing him to safely sail through the canyon onto the finish line. whereas Joe unfortunately gets damaged, and Dunes is forced to crash land on the other side, right back where he started from. However, this move that he made against Quick in hitting him was actually considered bad sportsmanship. Yeah, an illegal move. This does, in fact, upset a majority of his fans, including Bobby. Now, the reporter himself is even more baffled by the action that had just happened. And so, the day basically ends in sheer disappointment for Joe, while Quick was able to snag the win. So by all means, what we have here is something to look out for. Brick Camshaft, the name of the reporter himself, still does a lot of the coverage surrounding the event as well as recapping what had just gone down. But when you think about it, the event that had just transpired where Tonka Joe just slams right into Quick's truck just to save him from getting killed, it was basically playing back and forth. Like it was some kind of viral video full of outrage. Yeah, and this was a while before viral videos were even becoming a thing on the internet. And even when they were at that time, not many people would have taken to it as some sort of negative outlook. In any case though, Scan and Joe basically just argue with each other on this certain thing. And there's definitely repeat moments where Scan is told to zip it. Meanwhile, Jen comes by to inform Tonka Joe of what he has done. What he has done to his fans, especially to Bobby. Like I've said, it is sheer disappointment. And they do ensure that it drags on to this point. To ensure that Joe himself realizes the mistake he had made, even though he knows of the facts that were at hand, his decision to straight up break the rules and perform an illegal sportsmanship move like that, it was not something to be proud of by any means. However, they do carry on with the next race, which this time they have the truck known as Fins. And Fins, of course, is made for the water. As surf-tastic as it looks, it certainly does come equipped with its own unique features. Dunes was able to fly through a canyon, while Bolts was able to grapple onto the side of a mountain. But Fins, on the other hand, is more equipped for the water. However, in terms of everything that had just gone down, well, we had 2 teeth shifts take place with Bolts and Dunes. But yet, when Fins goes to teeth shift, after some problems went down, Bobby had gone missing and is later found to be on the pier after a little moment he apparently had with Robert B. Quick, including a photo sesh and a little guidance on where he can go to get a good view of Quick. After all, Bobby was so disappointed in Joe that he started to look more towards Quick to win the races and become the new Truck Week champion, which that basically seemed like that's where it was going. However, the events do play out just as you might expect. The trucks are racing on the dunes with 4 racers now, and when they do eventually make it to their next part, which is of course to go into their jet skis, Tonka Joe's T-shift with Fins does mean he goes into jet ski mode. A jet is inside of Bolts, and Dunes basically transforms into a flying aircraft. But with Fins, it comes equipped with its own jet ski, which launches out, much like how Bolts' jet jolts outward. But for this occasion, when Joe is on the jet ski, he finds Bobby on the pier as it begins to collapse. Once again, due to some not so good insight from the likes of Quick, as once again he had malfunctions with his truck. He was running into the support columns of the pier, causing it to collapse. But thankfully, Bobby is rescued at the last second by Tonka Joe. They make it back to land, and Quick once again ends up winning the race. Almost by complete accident. Yet they do make it seem like Quick is actually determined to win, rather than noticing that he is in fact going through some mistakes with his truck. Nevertheless, he takes 2 wins, and the next one is going to be the deciding factor. However, it does seem that luck is no longer going to be on Joe's side. Even though he had finally gotten the others to believe his case on this illegal move happening in the last race, where Quick was biffed in order to prevent himself from being smashed into the canyon, that it was basically done so to prevent Quick from getting killed. Even Bobby was inclined to believe that Joe was not to blame for anything. He didn't really do it on purpose. He was doing it to prevent Quick from getting hurt, or worse. Scan was able to prove this for him after all, and as a result, everybody who initially was very disappointed about Joe quickly felt sorry and forgave him for his mistake. And well, even Joe himself had his old photo with Bobby, which he handed it back to him, confirming that Bobby will no longer be taking Quick's side. So, the final race is hosted. And after all the crap that Quick had put through with his narcissism and such, you'd think Joe would catch a break here. But well, no, not in this instance. He's going to go all out with this truck known as Axle. And boy, it's a big beast. It's equipped with a giant water cannon on top, and is in fact made specifically for navigating fires and such. Why else would there be a lot of water in the truck itself? After all, part of the challenge that circumnavigates the final race is to in fact utilize target practice. Yep, they got to take down a bunch of targets on their way up through the mountain known as Mount Mucho Grande. They also got to rescue 3 volunteer firefighters from the top of the lookout tower. So, the challenge there is pretty impressive. You got to complete 3 major goals here while navigating through the mountains. On your way up and on your way back down, you got target practice, firefighter rescue, etc. And it's up to either Joe or Quick to take advantage of this. And while Joe is equipped with his own unique truck, Quick is not far behind either. I mean, he goes into his own trailer to dig out an impressive jet-fueled monstrosity. However, there is a bit of a problem there. The jet fuel tank is apparently leaking. Likewise, there was also a barrel of fuel that is basically rolling down the street towards Bigsburg. We'll get back to that in a moment, because the race starts with Joe getting a big lead, eventually going up the mountain with ease. He manages to get to the target zone, decimate all the targets with the water cannon, and eventually travels up towards the lookout tower where the firefighters are in. And while Quick is not far behind, he decides to take advantage of his jet fuel booster. However, he once again misinterprets things, and his bumbling behavior lands him in really big trouble. Because unlike the last 2 occasions, where he almost got himself killed at the canyon, and when he caused the pier to collapse, he actually ends up blowing his own truck up. Because once he ignites the fuel with his booster, all the while the fuel hose detached and was spraying fuel everywhere, he explodes. No joke. And he is sent flying up into the air. So his truck is destroyed, and he only has a tire to protect him, possibly from the fall that he might have to take. However, he no longer becomes much of a problem, because a new situation develops. The mountain becomes an inferno. All that jet fuel that had leaked and exploded was spreading all over the place, and the entirety of the mountain was eventually engulfed in a large flame. I almost felt like it looked sort of like a big active volcano that erupted, which there were other movies at the time, like Rescue Heroes the movie, and being that this came out only a year after, in 2004, of course I felt like that it would have looked like a volcano rather than it just being a big blaze. In any case though, the firefighters are trapped when the blaze surrounds the lookout tower, and Tonka Joe is struggling to try and find a way to put out the fires. He goes into T-shift mode, in which Axel is probably the most impressive of all. Basically, a helicopter and a truck mixed together. The helicopter portion takes off with a giant water cannon on top, in which he is able to put out the fires from above, but that is of course where we get back to the barrel. This barrel, of course, has more fuel inside, and it continues to leak out as it rolls even further down into Vicksburg. The fire eventually does catch on to the trail of fuel that is from the side of the mountain, from the barrel itself, eventually catching up to it, causing it to explode just as well. First, Quick's truck explodes, then the fire gets so bad it causes the fuel barrel to explode as well after tracing it for a good amount of distance. And this causes the sign plus the giant picture of Robert B. Quick to be burned as well. Thankfully, Axle is more than prepared. Remote activation allows the bottom portion of the truck itself to race back down the mountain and put out the fires with its own unique water cannons. And as Tonka Joe is basically finishing up topside, everybody else can only watch in horror as the darkness is unfolded. A massive fire had broken out, and there are possibly casualties or even fatalities out in the area. All they could do was just watch. The blaze itself is being put out, thankfully, and it's revealed Tonka Joe has, believe it or not, made it out of there. He was actually able to find Quick still trapped in that tire, and he even managed to make it through the blaze and rescue the volunteer firefighters. All three of them were able to make it out, and Quick himself was terrible. He felt very sorry for what he had done. I kind of hope it's that way. As for everybody else, they are beyond happy to see that Tonka Joe had basically saved the day and managed to win the race, ending Truck Week for that very occasion. And as we get back to Tonka Garage, we get one last glimpse of all the trucks, even a little roll call just to remind us what the names of these trucks are, as well as their unique sounds of their engines and horns. And right then and there, we get a bird's eye view from above, and then fade to black as we get some unique credits combined with some unique photographs of the events that transpired. Just like that, we have another unique film that is now 20 years old as of this year. And I am beyond happy to have included it in this season of films I'm willing to talk about again. So by all means, do be sure to check this out, because a YouTuber was actually able to create an HD variation of this. A graphic redesign with some impressive upgrades over the original SD quality. So of course, do be sure to not only check this out, but also other films I've talked about as well. And make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.
I want you, but I don't have you yet. I ain't got no tricks to be playing on you.